Good morning. Today I want to introduce a new segment called Process Control and Instrumentation at Home. Now every day when I get up, I need a cup of coffee. Well, I actually need a bunch of cups of coffee, but that's another story. The fact is, I have a machine that will do that. Now for most of us making a cup of coffee, we don't even think about it. But that's actually a sophisticated piece of equipment. It actually does a lot of things. So let's examine making a cup of coffee in terms of process control and instrumentation.
It's a Cup of Joe, brought to you by Process Control at Home.
Okay, so the first thing is I want a cup of coffee. So that immediately becomes our process variable.
Process variable is the dependent variable in a process. It's qualitative, a property of something like volume. It's constantly changing. In this case, our process variable is a cup of coffee.
It's a variable because I can choose the amount of coffee that I want. So, first thing is I'm going to need a vessel to receive my cup of coffee. By determining the vessel, I have determined indirectly my set point.
The set point is the target value of a process variable. Although it sounds like a constant, set points can be changed to alter the outcome of a process variable. In this example, the set point is 16 fluid ounces of coffee.
If I make my selection incorrectly, it'll overflow or have an insufficient amount. So my first variable, my process variable, is coffee. So I need to determine a set point. This machine gives me 3 different choices. So I'm going to pick the maximum choice so I can get the maximum amount. That means the process variable should be satisfied once the set point's been reached.
When the process variable equals the set point, the process will be out of error.
Okay, so in order to get coffee, I need to have a number of other things, some control variables.
Control variables are the independent variables that directly impacts and changes the value of the process variable.
Okay, so what's the next thing we need? Well, we need to have a coffee pot.
Now, coffee grounds, if measured separately, would be a variable, but here it is a standardized amount and therefore is controlled.
Okay, so I have the coffee that I want. It has the correct amount. I have my vessel to receive it. So now in order to get my process variable, I need to turn the machine on. So when it does its work, let's look at it and try to sort out what the control variables are. What does my cup of coffee depend on? What does it need to actually make a cup of coffee? Well, we've already determined that coffee grinds were a control variable. No coffee grinds, no coffee. Okay, we can eliminate that because that's been pre-measured for us. Okay, so the other thing is we need water, and it needs to be heated water. Those are our two control variables. Those are going to make my cup of coffee. So the water flowing through it is a control variable. Without water, no coffee. It's got to be the right temperature. So we have to determine what's the only thing that's going to get the water to the right temperature. Well, that would be the electricity. No electricity, the whole process falls to pieces. So we have two different control variables. We have one that is actually a physical thing, the water, and the second part is the electricity necessary to heat the water up to the right temperature. So I'm going to push the button. Starts to flash, it says, are you ready? Yep. I'm going to make my set point. I'm going to make my determination of how much I want of my process variable. And let the magic happen. Now there's a second way to look at all this. As it's making us a cup of coffee, what we've just talked about, our set point, our process variable, and our control variables, they're not real things in as much as they're tending to be abstract.
Variables are abstract, desired amounts. Variables, while essential for the process and designing, etc., do not actually do the real world work. They are acted upon by something else.
So what's actually physically doing the work? Well, those are elements.
Elements are the physical devices that are in contact with the process variable. They evaluate the current process variable value against the set point to determine if there's an error and act upon the control variables to change the process variable. Primary elements are physical devices that measure the process variable. They are in the inputs to the process. Control elements are the physical devices that compare the process variable value against the set point and determine if an action is required to eliminate any error. Final elements are physical devices that work with or affect the control variable to change the process variable and to remove any error.
So when I hit my set point button, that button that I selected is an input. So that's actually a primary element. It's the first step in the process, the first thing that's actually going to do some work. Because it's going to send a signal to a control board inside that says, okay, he or she has selected a large cup of coffee. Okay. Once it does that, it knows that it has to do a couple of other steps. It has to check that the lid's down. Got that signal, we're good. That's another primary element. Then it says, okay, I've got to turn the pump on to get the water to lift up to go through the machine. So the pump is another final element. As the water is running through the machine, it has to pass through a heating coil, another final element. Once that's done, it's going to flow through. Once the pre-measured amount has flown through, then it says, okay, I've satisfied the set point, I'm turning it off. So there's a float switch, another primary element that says that there's water there, because if there's no water, it's not going to work. The whole process falls and turns on the light and says, I'm sorry, you haven't got water. No water, no coffee. So let's do a quick review. This one machine has demonstrated not only our variables, our process variable of coffee, our control variables of water, and then the temperature of the water. It has shown us our set point by the selection of different amounts. That's all been taken care of. If I had chosen the wrong set point for the cup that I used, it's quite possible that I would have not enough to have a cup of coffee, so I would be in error.
Error is the difference between the current process variable value and the set point.
Or if I put a very small cup and then selected a large, then I would be in error because I would overflow. The other part we had was the elements. We had the primary elements, the inputs. The inputs that said he has selected a cup of coffee. He's actually put and closed the lid. It says that he's ready to make a cup of coffee. We have the primary element of the little float switch that says you've got water. No water, no coffee. Inside we have a control board that looks at those primary elements and says, okay, he has selected a set point, it's closed, and there's water to go, and it starts the final elements. It turns on the pump that lifts the water up, and it turns on the element to heat it up. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. There's lots of instrumentation at home, and we're going to show you.